The three points that I was going to touch on were, one was the concept of justice. And the second one, which is, I'll expand on in a moment. The second one is on how the media affects our perception of whether justice is being done or not. And the third is on the importance of getting up to speed and voting for judges, which I realize is difficult for many people, but I'll explain why it's important to get up to speed on that, because abstinence is not a neutral action. If you abstain from voting for judges, that means some other people are going to be picking the judges, and some of them may be far less informed. You may think you don't have enough information, but some of the people making the choices and voting may have even less than you, and maybe picking a judge based purely on surname or who knows what. So those are the three areas I was going to touch on. And again, if there's something else you want to cover, let me know. The first topic, justice. People lose faith that the justice system works, or the rule of law doesn't really work, etc. And I'll be the first. I've been a defense attorney, a prosecutor, a private practitioner, a judge at many different levels. I've been a hearing examiner, I've been on the school board, I've been a parent of a special needs student, and I've been in a lot of different roles. And I too have been frustrated sometimes that the rule of law does not always seem to work justice. I think what happens is that those who pass the law are trying to do the just and right thing when they pass the law, but can't always foresee every situation. And when the rule of law is applied to fact-specific circumstances, most of the time things work out in a just way, you might say, but every once in a while there's a situation where it doesn't work out in a just way. I was going to give you two real examples of that, and you can see how you react viscerally as I change the facts. The first one is a real case. Early on in the Court of Appeals, they had a case on appeal where a man had been convicted of drug possession and drug dealing and being the ringleader of a drug gang. The problem there for the legal issue was there was not enough evidence to convict him. The rule of law is that mere presence at the scene of a crime is not enough to support a conviction. How they had convicted this man was that a house was being searched with a search warrant to arrest the person who lived there for murder. This man happened to be there in the house. I don't know for what purpose, but probably drug dealing. So when the search warrant was executed, they arrested him too. And I think probably what happened is the police knew this guy, because I've seen him come through the system several times. They knew he was a ringleader of a drug gang, so they were trying to figure out how they could get him too. So this is very clever. The evidence at the trial, they put forth evidence about how the ringleaders, the drug kingpins, do not keep any evidence on them. I remember asking during oral argument of the prosecutor, do you have anything? Is there anything that shows he had drugs on him? No. They showed that the ringleader would have the other people, the lackeys, carry the drugs, have the cell phones, have the guns, anything that would tie them to criminal activity, so that they looked blameless. And the only piece of evidence they had was this guy was present in the house and a fingerprint on a bottle of Scope mouthwash in the bathroom, and that was it. And the police, they must have just said, this is what happens. This is with the ringleaders. He is a ringleader because he doesn't have all this stuff on him. So it was a very perplexing case, because I figured the police probably had the right guy, but the rule of law required that you have more than mere presence, and that is all they had. And I was just practically, I should say, not begging, but during oral argument saying to the prosecutor, don't you have any other evidence? No, no, no. So we ended up reversing that conviction. I felt bad about it. I felt that guy, this is big high-level drug guys being back out there dealing drugs again, although I was confident he would come back to the system again and they could get him again, which actually happened. And I felt like on one level, the justice was done in the sense that the rule of law was applied, and I'll show another example in a minute. But I also felt that maybe justice wasn't done because this really bad guy, who's been doing bad things, was released from jail or from prison. There wasn't enough evidence to convict him. So that one still bothers me, but I know we did the right thing. And sometimes being a judge, you're applying the rule of law. And there have been other instances, which I'm happy to go into it later if you want, where it just would either break our hearts to have to rule a certain way because the rule of law required this and there wasn't enough evidence to do what might have seemed to be the sensible thing, which is not something we had the power to do in every single case. So taking this rule of law that mere presence is not sufficient to convict somebody of a crime, let's take it to you might be able to come up with a personal example. Let's say your son or daughter, late teens or something, is off with some friends and they're going to stop by a friend of a friend's to pick up a DVD, or I don't know, I guess I'm archaic talking about DVDs because everybody streams stuff, but something, they're going to go by and pick up something, right. And at the house where they pick up whatever they're picking up, there's a lot of underage drinking going on, maybe some marijuana smoking, which I guess is no longer illegal, but there are things going on that aren't definitely legal. The neighbors are complaining because it's loud and the parents are out of town, so the police come in and they just arrest all the young people in the house. Your son and daughter didn't drink anything, didn't have any drugs, wasn't stealing anything, just happened to be there along for the ride literally with a friend and didn't do anything criminally wrong, although maybe was in close proximity to the alcohol or something. But the reason we have the rule of law that mere presence isn't enough is it's for those types of situations too, is because you happen to be standing next to somebody who's doing a crime doesn't mean you are also guilty unless there's proof that you, what's called aided or abetted the crime, encouraged it, supplied some of the criminal element or something, but just plain old being there doesn't create a crime. So then my last point is on voting for judges, and I alluded to that at the beginning. We vote for judges in this state. Not all states do that, at least for state judges. The federal judges are appointed. There are other processes for choosing judges that can be a hybrid with voting and appointing. There have been commissions in our state which have studied the other alternatives, but so far there's never really been a movement to change it. There are complaints from time to time, but no real change. Washington historically has been a very populace-oriented state. We vote probably on more things than any other state. We vote for coroner, we vote for sheriff, we vote for, I don't know why we vote for coroner, because it seems to me you need someone who knows about forensics and autopsies and things like that, but we vote for coroner. And so we probably aren't going to give up our right to vote for judges or anything else anytime soon. So assuming that we will be continuing to vote for judges, then we need to get up to speed and educate ourselves when it's time to make a choice on the ballot for a judge. We have a problem with this partly because the judicial races are nonpartisan. In Texas, in contrast, they have partisan races. They have Republican judges and Democrat judges, and they've got all kinds of judges. And I don't know if they have as good a reputation as our judges here. So there's no one party that takes on and supports particular judicial candidate, although both parties will sometimes hand out flyers at booths, and I've had help and appreciated in the past. The second thing is, how do you go about getting information about what judges, which types of people are going to be good judges and which aren't? If the voter's pamphlet, there's a little blurb that each candidate writes. Nobody reviews it to see if it's really accurate or even on point. The only thing is that if there's something that's a lie in there, someone can file a complaint with the Public Disclosure Commission, which usually doesn't get resolved until after the election anyway. So you've got basically a self-serving statement by somebody in the voter's pamphlet, which is better than nothing because at least it has some sort of biographical information. But there, we've been very fortunate in Kitsap over the last 10 years or so that one of our local lawyers, Paul Fjeldstedt, started a website called votingforjudges.org, and I've talked about this before, and it covers the whole state. So every year when there's a judicial election, you go on for votingforjudges.org, you plug in what county you're in, it will list all the judges you have to vote for, Supreme Court, local, whatever, in Bremerton, if there's a city judge, any of that. It's got links to who gave money for those, who supports that candidate, who does not, what the person's background is, links to various articles written about the person, almost anything you need to know. So you can find out a lot about those candidates by voting for judges.org. Now, I have tried to get the Secretary of State to include a link to that website in the voters pamphlet. They won't do it because it's not a state-sponsored or overseen site or something. So the voters are kind of left in the dark. And I'll also mention the Kitsap County Auditor. Over the years, when the state has not put together a voters pamphlet for the primary, and some of the judicial races are decided in the primary, our various county auditors have gone ahead and put together a Kitsap County voters primary pamphlet and included some of the statewide races. I remember a number of years ago, I can't remember, it was Karen Flynn was our county auditor, and there wasn't going to be a statewide pamphlet, and so she was covering all the state races, and the Secretary of State was after her for covering state races in a county flyer, and she said, well, you're not going to do it. My voters need information. I'm going to do it anyway. So I don't know if she said, so sue me or stop me, but she went ahead and did it anyway. That's been the tradition in Kitsap for a long time, and we had a Supreme Court race a number of years ago that was decided in the primary. And there was not very much information out there. A lot of voters were voting based just on the Hispanic surname and the Norwegian or Scandinavian surname of the candidates, when in fact if you put their qualifications on a spectrum, that they wouldn't even be on the same spectrum, and that was a rather scary proposition. The state has now changed it so that those types of races will not be decided in the primary, they'll be decided in the general election, when supposedly there'll be more voter turnout, more awareness. But as I said earlier, and I've actually had confronted people in the past, is that you think you don't know enough to vote in a judicial election, and that by abstaining, that's a neutral act. I've got to tell you that it's not a neutral act, and you may very well, because there are other people who are going to vote whether they have any information or not based on who knows what. I had someone come up to me once, I was marching in a parade in Hopiam. Someone came up and said, oh, I'm going to vote for you. I've never seen a judge march in a parade before. Well, I'm very glad to have the vote, but that's not a very good reason to cast a vote for a judicial candidate. So I just wanted to make a plug again for votingforjudges.org and talking to people to get information so you can vote in judicial races. Yeah.